This is PIX on Politics Daily with Dan Mannarino.
Hey everybody, Dan Mannarino here, and welcome to Pop Daily. It is June 19th, Juneteenth, so a lot of celebrations going on for Juneteenth today. A lot of people are off. But I want to talk about the world of politics as we often do, and I brought in Chris Sommerfeldt, City Hall reporter for the New York Daily News. Good to see you, Chris.
Likewise.
And I brought Chris in for a very specific reason. So we're going to talk about the mayor's race and the latest poll that came out and what my conversation was with Governor Hochul and so on and so forth in just a minute. But this week at the mayor's press conference, he has these weekly off topics, as many of you know, and we go. And a lot of the journalists go, right, Chris?
Sure.
And a lot of them ask the mayor questions, but you have to be called upon to ask a question. I've been down there a few times. Henry, as you know, goes pretty much every single time. You raise your hand, they select you to ask a question. Chris here from the Daily News, you've been trying, you go every time, and you're a great reporter. Tell me what has happened the past couple months.
For about 3 months, close to 4 at this point, City Hall has refused to call on me without really offering any real explanation for why that is. So over the past couple of weeks, when I've showed up on Tuesdays, I've made a point of trying to get questions in between answers, in that little bit of dead space.
Meaning he finishes an answer, somebody else is raising their hand.
Correct.
They're about to be selected, and you'll throw out a question.
And usually I throw in a question that's relevant to the answer that he just gave, following up on something he said.
Yeah.
Not interrupting, not being obnoxious, just quickly getting in. Since they have made a point of not calling on me. On Tuesday, when I did that, the mayor became very animated and very angry and said, if you do that ever again, you are never to come back into these briefings.
Meaning he actually said that you're not going to be welcome back in here.
You're going to be banned.
Yeah.
I tried again, just asked politely, Mr. Mayor, would you answer my question? That's all I'm trying to do, doing my job. He shot back to his press staff in the room. You heard him. He did it again. Make sure security knows that he is not welcome in the Blue Room.
So for those who don't know, City Hall reporters have a room in City Hall. It's called Room 9. That's where you work out of.
Correct.
And a lot of times you'll leave that room and just walk down a hallway over to where the mayor has his press conference. So you're still allowed in your room, where your office is. The unions have gotten involved. The paper's gotten involved.
Yeah.
Tell me about what happened after that moment.
After that moment, I've continued doing my job. I see the mayor around the building all the time. I try to ask him questions, as I always do. I did it yesterday. We haven't really heard much from City Hall in terms of whether they're going to try to enforce this quote-unquote ban. There's another press briefing, presumably next week. We'll see what happens then, but the union stands behind me. The paper stands behind me.
New York Press Club.
The New York Press Club, PEN America, other types of First Amendment groups. So I plan on keeping doing my job, and we'll see what the mayor does.
So Katie Honan, who many of you know from the show as well, she works for the city. She saw the mayor right after that, followed him down the hallway, said, why'd you do this? He said, it was because you were interrupting other reporters who were asking
Which
questions.
is not true.
Right. Now, in a normal setting, in a lot of press conferences, you don't actually have to be called upon or selected. Like if it's out on the street or whatever, reporters raise their hand, or there's an order, or a lot of times it's just shouting out a question.
Yeah.
This mayor has changed that by having these once a week off topics, and you have to be selected. And if you're not selected, you don't get to ask a question. You have an important job to do. Are there other journalists in the room, Chris, because I'm not there every week, that don't get called upon, that raise their hand?
Of course, since they have chosen this format where you have sometimes 30 journalists packed into a room just over the course of an hour, some journalists end up not being called upon 1 week or maybe 2 weeks in a row even.
Yeah.
Everyone can understand that and be sympathetic towards that because there's limited time, but it's this months-long, deliberate sidelining of me. I haven't seen that with any other reporters.
Now, yeah, I mean, if you don't get a question 1 week, you hopefully get the question the following week, right?
Yeah.
But your relationship with the mayor has been fraught, not most recently. He hasn't been a fan of your reporting. He calls it out during his press conferences.
Sure.
All the time. So do you think this has anything to do with that?
I am not going to speculate
Yeah.
on what's in the mayor's head. I am, like you, like all other reporters covering New York City politics, viewing the mayor's administration through a critical lens of objective reporting. I'm doing my job every day. If he takes issue with my reporting, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not asking him to be my biggest fan. He's not asking me to be his biggest fan. I'm just doing my job. And what I wish is that the mayor and his press team drop this seemingly personal vendetta and just got back to everyone being professional and being able to do their jobs.
Yeah, I mean, it's not personal. And our job as journalists is to hold feet to the fire of those that are in power. And sometimes it is with a critical lens. And then, and this, people always ask me sometimes, how do you get some folks on your show, whatever. It's a delicate dance because, if you hold people's feet to the fire too much, then you do get kind of blacklisted and blackballed, and it's the nature of the beast. But so Tuesday, you're still going to go.
Of course.
And see what happens.
Well, we'll see if it's on Tuesday. It's election day after all, so maybe the mayor might postpone it. Who knows? Right.
Okay. We're going to leave that there. Chris is going to stick around. We're going to talk about the race for mayor right after this. All right, welcome back. I got Chris Sommerfeldt, City Hall reporter for the New York Daily News with me right now. And an interesting week. We're in the final days. Early voting is underway in the race for mayor. And election day, of course, the all-important day of Tuesday. Interesting nuggets of information here came out from the Marist poll. It showed a narrowing between the two frontrunners, Zohran Mamdani and Andrew Cuomo. So now it's down to about 10 points. But there is this key number that you and I have talked about, which is the undecideds.
Right.
11% undecided. You're out there on the streets. You're talking to voters. Where do you think that undecided, what are they waiting for?
That question is so hard to tell, but what I think we can also deduce from the Marist poll is that the undecideds who have started getting into the race, they're going disproportionately towards Zohran Mamdani, which, of course, his campaign sees as a very positive sign. You had a Marist poll back in May that had something like 19% undecided. 8% of them have now gotten into the mix. And they are almost all of them going towards Zohran. Another 11%, who knows if all of them are going to follow that same trend, but it seems like they are gravitating towards him.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Marist poll was put out in the field before the last debate.
Correct.
When things kind of shifted a bit, and you saw that there was this Brad Lander moment in the debate where he kind of went after Andrew Cuomo, and then of course everything that played out this week with Brad Lander being arrested, being put by ICE, being put into a facility. All the candidates came down to support him. Governor Hochul had to remove him, unbeknownst to know if that it will help him, give him a boost or whatever. But Mamdani also is having a moment right now with the anti-Semitism talk and whether or not he can identify and say he's not an anti-Semite. He got emotional about this. Were you there?
I was not there, but I have seen the clips.
And so Andrew Cuomo's pouncing on that moment, flooding the airwaves now with new ads from money that he's getting from his super PAC, which is Mike Bloomberg donating millions of dollars to it.
$8 million at this point.
$8 million. And it seems that these are the two. However, Zohran Mamdani says that he's going to pay for a lot of things with taxes. And he wants to raise the tax rate. I just spoke to Governor Hochul. The full interview is airing Friday, but we put out the clip yesterday, and it went bonkers with her saying, I'm not raising taxes. And what that means for Zohran.
What it means is that if elected, he would have a very, very hard time carrying out his agenda. And I think he's even being a bit clear-eyed on that point. He has started modifying aspects of his proposals. When I embedded with his campaign on a recent weekend, he was saying something to the effect of, look, I know that the world of politics, in the world of politics, you have to be flexible. So he admitted that, okay, if I can't get through a 2% tax increase on people earning above $1 million, I would be okay with maybe settling for 1%. So you're already seeing him modifying some of his most call them extreme, call him most ambitious proposals, because he knows, and everyone knows, that his agenda is very tough to get through.
What's very interesting here is I asked them all recently in a mayoral forum that I did. I asked all of them, if you don't win the primary, what happens to you? For Zohran Mamdani, Adrienne Adams, Brad Lander, they're under the Scott Stringer, Working Families Party endorsed them all, right? So do they go onto the Working Families Party as a general election candidate on an independent line of the Working Families Party? Andrew Cuomo says he will be on the ballot in November regardless.
Correct.
Then you have Eric Adams, Jim Walden, Curtis Sliwa. So do you see a world where there is maybe a Zohran Mamdani if he doesn't win under the Working Families Party?
I absolutely think he will. His stock answer now for weeks has been, I'm focused on the primary. I'll consider that question when or if it becomes relevant. But based on how he's talking, based on the political existential threat that he and the Working Families Party portrays Andrew Cuomo as, I think that the Working Families Party is absolutely going to put up a candidate in November.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's interesting for Andrew Cuomo, who saw himself as the clear winner and now is saying, well, if I don't win the primary. I mean, it was kind of astonishing to me when he said, I'll be on the ballot. Because it was the first time I actually heard him say, well, I'm going to be there regardless. Eric Adams, does he have a campaign yet?
It depends on how you define a campaign, but
staff?
he not really. He has a chair of his campaign, Frank Carone, his former chief of staff. He has a volunteer spokesman, Todd Shapiro, who's kind of a PR professional. Other than that, it's a skeleton crew. There's not really a full-on campaign operation, but he has kind of made clear that he uses his city hall office at this point as a campaign perch of sorts.
Yeah, bully pulpit. Yeah.
Bully pulpit, it comes with the job. There's nothing unusual about that per se, but I think he really sees his office now as his campaign home base.
Yeah.
And once the primary is over, he has promised that he will ramp it up more.
Yeah.
We'll see what that looks like.
Very interesting, because in the midst of all of this that's going on, you won't need this on election day, your jacket, because it's going to be 105 degrees. And it's
we're gonna melt.
I mean, it's interesting to see if that's going to at all affect polling places with air conditioning, if people are going to come out in the heat to vote. We often talk about, elections that are at weird times with weather and how it plays a factor. But it's going to be very interesting because primaries relatively are low. Early voting, we're seeing a boost. But it's going to be interesting on Tuesday. Where are you going to be?
I think we saw a little sprinkle of that with Andrew Cuomo saying that the BOE needs to ramp up their heat precautions because he has a lot of older voters.
Right.
And I think there's some anxiety in the Cuomo camp about whether they're going to come out when it's 100 degrees out.
Yeah, it's interesting. Sunday kind of kicks off this heat wave. Chris is going to be joining me now for the roundtable on PIX on Politics, airing Friday, by the way. Governor Hochul, you'll see the full interview there. Chris, always good to see you. Thanks for being here on PIX on Politics Daily. And we will see you back here tomorrow.